Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. Slammiversary, yes. At the time of recording, Slammiversary is about 24 hours away. So we're finally here. Slammiversary, of course, airs tomorrow night, Saturday, July 17, beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's one of Impact Wrestling's biggest shows of the year. It's the celebration of their anniversary, hence Slammiversary. And it's also really been a big show over the course of the last couple of years because it really marks sort of the beginning of a new season for Impact Wrestling. It marks the start of something fresh, something new. They say our whole world starts again, our whole world starts over, and it's because last year, during the pandemic, Slammiversary featured the return of several former Impact Wrestling stars to the promotion, also featured several new names coming into the promotion, several former WWE stars, and that's what the hype is this year as well. But in addition to those new names rumored to be coming in, there's also a big main event. There's the AEW crossover because the world champion right now, of course, is Kenny Omega. In addition to being the Impact World Champion, he's also the AEW World Champion, so there's an AEW influence on this show as well. So there's an exciting lineup. There's an exciting card. What we will be doing tomorrow, before we get into the preview and predictions for tomorrow's event, tomorrow we will be doing a live watch along as we do for every Impact Wrestling pay-per-view and special events, Impact Plus events. So there is going to be a watch along on the channel. So be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner, click the notification bell. You'll be notified when we go live for the watch along tomorrow night. But if you can't join us for the watch along, we will be going live after the show as well for a post-show reaction stream just to break down the matches, break down the storylines, react to things. It's going to be a lot of fun. So be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner, and click that notification bell. You'll be notified when we go live for both tomorrow's live streams on the channel. So let's get into the matches. Let's talk about Slammiversary, and let's start off with the Knockouts Tag Team Championship. Now, it has been announced that this match is going to be on the Countdown to Slammiversary show, so it's going to be essentially on the pre-show, and it's for the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. It's Fire and Flavor, the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, defending against Havoc and Rosemary. Now, this feud's been going on for a little while in Impact Wrestling. I think Fire and Flavor have done a relatively good job as the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. Of course, they were the inaugural champions after the championships were brought back. They lost the championships to Jordynne Grace and Rachel Ellering for a hot second before they won it back at Impact Wrestling Under Siege. I think they do a good job. This has been one of my complaints with WWE and their women's tag team division, and I don't mean this to be, comparing Impact to WWE. I don't really like to compare companies that much like that, because a lot of the time I just don't think it's fair to do that, because you're talking different booking philosophies, different universes, etc. But one of my big criticisms with the women's tag team division in WWE is it's their criticism of tag team wrestling in general, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's that singles people are put together and they're a tag team. Fire and Flavor, even before coming the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, they were an established tag team. They were an established act together in Impact Wrestling, and that's why I like them a lot as a tag team. I think they complement each other very well in the ring. I'm going to be honest, I'm not massively sold on the promos. I get that they're very charismatic, and I get that they can do good promos on the mic. Sometimes when they're doing their promos, I do kind of feel like they're trying a bit too hard. Maybe that's a harsh thing from myself. It's just, sometimes when they're cutting the promos, it feels like they're trying their best to be entertaining, be over the top, and look, the fact that I negatively react to that, maybe you could say, well, they're heels. They're getting the desired reaction from you there. So maybe that's the case. Just, again, for me, I don't know. It just really doesn't do it sometimes with the promos for me. But I think they've got a ton of potential. And again, I really like their matches. As far as this match, I expect them to retain. I think that there's been lots of discussion. And we're going to obviously be talking a lot about talent coming in to Impact, because Impact Wrestling have been hyping up themselves quite a lot. I think this one is going to lead to the Iconics. Their new name is going to be the Inspiration coming into Impact Wrestling. So I see a scenario where Fire and Flavor win the match. They retain the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. I don't really see a reason as to why Havoc and Rosemary would become the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. To be honest, I think they've done fine as a tag team, but again, I don't see the need to do the title change here. I think once Fire and Flavor drop the championships officially, because again, they only dropped it for a short amount of time to Jordynne Grace and Rachel Ellering, I think it's going to be to a big established tag team. It might even be to Rachel Ellering and Jordynne Grace sometime in the future. They're obviously doing a storyline at some sorts with those two, even though I think Jordynne Grace is going to turn on Rachel Ellering eventually. Nevertheless, I think when it comes to this match, I think Fire and Flavor retain the tag team championships. And I think then after the match is when we see the debuts of the Inspiration, the Iconics in Impact Wrestling. And it's going to be not the only debut/return of a former WWE star on Impact Wrestling at Slammiversary tomorrow night. So I'm going to go with Fire and Flavor to retain here. Again, I don't see a reason as to why Havoc and Rosemary would win. And then also after the match, I'm going to say that the Iconics, the Inspiration, show up. Now, a match that was just announced last night on Impact Wrestling, actually on Access TV, is Brian Myers and Tenille Dashwood going up against Matt Cardona and a mystery opponent. So last night, we saw a situation where Brian Myers lost to Jake Something, acknowledged him as a professional. After the match, there was Matt Cardona was at ringside and he was attacked by Brian Myers. Out comes Tenille Dashwood. She attacked Cardona from behind, gave him a low blow. Then it was subsequently announced by Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore later on in the evening that there would be a mixed tag team match at Slammiversary. Brian Myers and Tenille Dashwood going up against Matt Cardona and a mystery opponent and a mystery partner, rather. My only thing I will say about this, and I did an Impact News video today, be sure to check that out on the channel. My only thing I would say about this is that it's really obvious that it would be Chelsea Green. It's really but it has to be, because you notice like sometimes when you're watching a movie or a television program and all signs are pointing in one direction. And then you say to yourself, I know everything's telling me that's the answer. And it's so obvious that that's the answer, but it's too obvious, right? But I don't think that's an issue here. I think Chelsea Green showing up in Impact Wrestling is expected. I think a lot of people, myself, have expected it for a while. I think the only thing that might have put people off that scent is when she showed up at the Ring of Honor Best in the World show last weekend. But we've subsequently learned some new details about that when it comes to Chelsea Green and her situation with Ring of Honor. Yes, she's participating in that Women's Championship tournament. Yes, she's going to be doing commentary in that Women's Championship tournament as well. But she hasn't signed a contract with ROH. We did a video yesterday talking about Impact Wrestling's willingness to work with other promotions, begin building working relationships with those promotions, names like Ring of Honor, MLW, the NWA. Of course, they've already got working relationships with the likes of AAA, AEW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So it's not out of the realm of possibility when Chelsea Green was working out that deal. Well, again, she hasn't signed anything, but when she was agreeing to those dates for Ring of Honor, saying, yes, I'm going to be in the tournament, yes, I'll do commentary, but FYI, I'm going to work with Impact as well, because they reached out to me 15 minutes after I got released by WWE. Impact Wrestling just worked that quickly. So, I mean, I know it's the obvious choice, but I'm going to go with Chelsea Green winning here, being Matt Cardona's partner, rather, Laurel Van Ness, the hot mess. I've been saying a lot about Matt Cardona when it pertains to Impact Wrestling that I want to see something different. I want to see something different from Matt Cardona because since he's been released by WWE, I don't see the change. I don't see the difference. Matt Cardona right now is still Zack Ryder. There's no difference between the Matt Cardona we have seen for the last 18 months or so and the Zack Ryder that was in WWE for like 10 years. Realistically, there is no difference. Yes, he changed his name, and yes, he's got different entrance music now, and he was in AEW for a hot second. Now he's in Impact Wrestling, but he still just looks exactly like Zack Ryder. And he still has the same character, just a guy from Long Island that's slightly over the top. That's why I've been so excited to see the stuff that Matt Cardona has been doing with GCW and the Nick Gage stuff. He works as a heel in that environment, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's great because it's different. It's out of the box. It's something we haven't seen Matt Cardona doing before. And if Chelsea Green comes in to Impact Wrestling and is Matt Cardona's partner, of course, in real life, they're engaged to be married. Chelsea Green is Matt Cardona's fiance. I think that plays off real life, but I think if Matt Cardona could tap in to the Laurel Van Ness hot mess character, then I think Matt Cardona turns into something different. Maybe they kind of do the angle of, you think she's crazy? Wait until you've seen me. Wait until you see us both together. You'll see how crazy I can truly be. That's an interesting direction to go. That's evolution of the character. That's something different that we haven't seen Matt Cardona do before. And that's the direction I would like to see Matt Cardona go in. So I'm going to say Laurel Van Ness, Chelsea Green, whatever you want to call her, is going to be Matt Cardona's partner tomorrow. I would say that they win. But I hope it's the beginning of something more. Obviously, they could continue this rivalry coming out of Slammiversary because, of course, Brian Myers, Matt Cardona, best friends. They got a podcast together. They were edge heads together, tag team champions in WWE, etc. They were even kayfabe brothers in their early days, the major brothers in WWE. And then you can also play up a situation whereby Tenille Dashwood once was, a partner of Matt Cardona in real life, and then you can be Chelsea Green, Laurel Van Ness, the hot mess, being like, nobody, no ex of mine tries to go after my man again, and they can, spin that off into something coming out to Slammiversary as well. I don't know how I would really feel about that. Again, I would prefer it that Matt Cardona and Laurel Van Ness just go off and do their own thing in Impact. Matt Cardona evolves, change the character, goes into something different. Whether or not they actually do that, time will tell. But I think I'm going to go Chelsea Green, Laurel Van Ness as Matt Cardona's partner tomorrow, and I'm going to say that they win that match. Next, we have the Impact Tag Team Championships. We have Impact Tag Team Champions Violent by Design, probably going to be Rhino and Joe Doering, facing off against Rich Swann and Willie Mack, TJP and Fallah, and the Good Brothers for the Impact World Tag Team Championships in a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match. I think this is a straight-up Fatal 4-Way. I don't think there's any eliminations or anything like that. This is an interesting one. I find it funny when it comes to the Good Brothers in Impact Wrestling, because the Good Brothers, they are on two of the biggest contracts in Impact Wrestling right now. Two of the biggest stars in Impact Wrestling. Of course, they're appearing on New Japan Pro Wrestling television at the moment. They're appearing on AEW television. Karl Anderson faced Jon Moxley at Fyter Fest this past week. And of course, they appear every week on Impact Wrestling television as well. So they're in three separate territories right now. But in my opinion, when it comes to the tag team championships in Impact Wrestling, they should be nowhere near the Impact Tag Team Championships because they never win. They never win in Impact Wrestling. Go back to the beginning of this year. It's very rare, very, very rare that they win a match in Impact Wrestling. Now, I know they did, was it a couple of weeks ago on Impact? They actually won a match. But they don't win. I mean, they really don't. They dropped the Impact Tag Team Championships at Sacrifice to Finn Juice, lost again to Finn Juice. Then they lost at Impact Rebellion. They lost to Impact Under Siege in the 6-man tag team match. They lost that against All Odds in the tag match of Sami Callihan and Tommy Dreamer. These guys, especially Karl Anderson, just eats pinfalls in Impact Wrestling. They couldn't be further away from the Impact Tag Team Championships, frankly, if they tried. So I find it quite humorous that they're in this match. Personally, though, I don't think they win. I don't think they would win this match. I'm going to eliminate them from this one because they don't need it either. Unless Impact were really keen on having the Good Brothers carry the tag titles once again on AEW television, but that didn't do anything before. So I don't think that's any desire. And again, the same with New Japan Pro Wrestling television. So I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think the Good Brothers win. TJP and Fallah, I think they're in there just for bodies. I'd be really surprised if they won. The only team I could see taking the titles off of Violent by Design in this match would be Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Rich Swann's former world champion. This is the thing with Rich Swann you have to remember, is that this was a guy that, it was title versus title earlier this year, right? Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann. It was a huge main event. It's the biggest bit of business that Impact Wrestling has done since Anthem purchased the company in 2017 in terms of pay-per-view buys, etc. So Rich Swann's a big deal in the Impact Wrestling world. I just don't think it's the right time. I don't think it's the right time for Violent by Design to lose the tag team championships. They haven't held it that long. We're talking, about a month or so, maybe 6 weeks. It's not a huge amount of time. I think you continue to put the heat on the faction. I think you continue to have Violent by Design win matches. I would probably protect Rich Swann and Willie Mack in this one, and I certainly wouldn't have the Good Brothers eat another pinfall. Lord knows that's all they do in Impact Wrestling. So I would say that Violent by Design get the win by pinning either TJP and Fallah, probably Fallah, to be honest. And I think Violent by Design retain. Again, I really don't see any reason. I don't see any reason for Violent by Design to drop the titles right now. It doesn't. They're an over faction. They're one of the best things going on Impact Wrestling television right now. And again, the only team in that match that I would say, maybe would be Rich Swann and Willie Mack. But I think that comes later on. I don't think that comes right now. So I'm going to say that Violent by Design retain here. That's going to be my pick. Next up, we have Morrissey versus Eddie Edwards. Great to see Eddie Edwards back in the ring as well. There was some concern he might not be able to make Slammiversary, of course, because he had appendicitis and had to undergo surgery to remove his appendix during the last set of Impact Wrestling television tapings. That's why he missed that final match at the tapings. But thankfully, he's back in time, and he's going to continue his feud with Morrissey. Morrissey and Eddie Edwards had a couple of segments. Again, they managed to weave it into Edwards missing that last match. This one's, again, an interesting one. I don't know. I really don't know if the plan was something different initially for Eddie Edwards, because at the Impact Under Siege event, you would have thought that Eddie Edwards was going to have a match against Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship at Slammiversary, considering they were in a 6-man tag team match. It was Finn Juice and Eddie Edwards versus the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. Eddie Edwards gets the victory in that match, pinning, who else? Karl Anderson. And at the time, the outlook looked, okay, then it must be Edwards versus Kenny Omega. And they just didn't go in that direction, which to me is just very odd. Very odd, considering that Eddie Edwards is revered in Impact Wrestling because he's an Impact guy. He said it in interviews, I'm staying in Impact Wrestling for the remainder of my career. I don't want to go anywhere else. And frankly, I'm not even sure Eddie Edwards is going to go anywhere else in his career. I think he's very happy in Impact, multiple-time Impact World Champion. He's an Impact guy. Now, being the Impact guy that he is, I think he loses at Slammiversary. Morrissey's undefeated. Impact Wrestling know exactly what they've got in him. I think that's very obvious. We don't know the full details of Morrissey's contract. Initially, when he signed, someone said it was a long-term contract. Then he himself said it's not a long-term, it's a short-term deal. We don't know the situation. Morrissey's been open saying he wants to work in Japan. Not that that would stop him working for Impact. They have a working relationship together. They'd be more than happy to have him get over in Japan because it makes Impact Wrestling look better as long as he stays to do dates for Impact Wrestling. I don't see a situation where Morrissey loses this one. I think if you look at the guys that Morrissey has beat so far, whether it's, Willie Mack, whether it is, he beat Rich Swann. Rich Swann's a former Impact World Champion, right? They are putting a lot of heat. They're heating this guy up, getting him just going through guys. You could argue, what's the end game with Morrissey if that's the case? Because if he's plowing through every single babyface, eventually he has to become world champion. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Not right now. Not even maybe by Bound for Glory, but maybe at the end of the year. That's a possibility. It depends however you get this guy. And again, Impact Wrestling know what they've got. Morrissey, I always bring this up about Morrissey, Big Cass, whatever you want to call him. This was a guy that WWE saw a lot of money in. Now, that doesn't mean anything to Impact Wrestling, of course, but obviously the higher-ups in WWE thought this is a guy we can make a lot of money with. This guy could be a star. That's why when Daniel Bryan comes out of retirement after he's finished feuding with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, what's his first feud? It was with Morrissey, because they knew this guy's money. If we can get this guy over as a big monster heel, we can make a lot of money if we've got the right babyface. The right babyface in this case might be Eddie Edwards. Talk about an underdog underneath babyface, heart and soul of Impact Wrestling. That works. But I just don't see Morrissey losing here. To me, that doesn't make any sense. I think they continue to heat him up. I think they continue to, again, get heat on him, make him the big monster heel of the promotion. I would think eventually, if you can turn, say, Moose into a badass babyface, then it's going to take a while. I wouldn't say Bound for Glory, but sometime maybe next year. If you've got Morrissey as a big monster heel, then you've got Moose as the Impact World Champion as a big monster babyface. That's a match people will pay to see. Alternatively, even the Morrissey versus, say, Josh Alexander coming out of Slammiversary, again, knowing that the X Division, we'll talk about Ultimate X in a second, but knowing that the X Division isn't about weight limits, it's about no limits. Imagine Josh Alexander versus Morrissey for the X Division Championship. Now, that's interesting, because I could say Josh Alexander could absolutely be the guy to defeat Morrissey in Impact. So there's a lot of exciting things they can still do with Morrissey. So to me, it doesn't make sense to have him lose here. So I think he beats another highly established star on a big Impact stage. So I think Morrissey leaves victorious tonight at Slammiversary. Now, we touched on the X Division. We touched on Ultimate X. The Ultimate X returns tomorrow night at Slammiversary. It's an Ultimate X match for the X Division Championship. You've got Trey, Miguel, Ace Austin, Josh Alexander, the X Division Champion, Chris Bay, Rohit, Raju, and Petey Williams, all vying for that X Division Championship that's going to be suspended in the middle of the Ultimate X structure. Now, this is the first Ultimate X match in about 2 years. I think something like 2-3 years. I mean, it's right up there for being the match of the show. And I think it's probably going to steal the show, if I'm honest with you. Arguably, it's the match I'm looking forward to the most because Ultimate X matches, I mean, they're just woven into the fabric of Impact Wrestling history, aren't they? I still contend we could have done a King of the Mountain match, but look, that's a long time ago now at this point. I'm excited for it, and you look at some of the guys in this match, Trey, Miguel, some of these guys, look, even without Ultimate X, are doing crazy stuff that your brain sometimes can't comprehend because they're just so incredibly talented at what they do. You know, Trey Miguel doing the Power Slide Destroyer, or you got Ace Austin, some defying logic and gravity. Chris Bay's an unbelievable talented wrestler as well, and Josh Alexander, I'm a huge fan of him. I think he's a future world champion, and even veterans like Petey Williams and look, Rohit can carry his weight as well. We're going to see some crazy stuff. There is no doubt in my mind we're going to see some absolute crazy stuff. In fact, the only thing that can hurt this match is expectation, because I think the expectation is so high going into it. I think a lot of people will be thinking, I think these guys are going to do just absolute craziness. In terms of the outcome, and I know I've gone with pretty much most people retaining here. I am going to go over title change eventually. But in terms of an outcome, I don't see a reason why Josh Alexander would lose. I just don't. We've seen those reports recently that are saying that Impact Wrestling are doing a huge focus, a huge push on the X Division. They want to have the X Division elevated to a similar level as the Impact World Championship. They reference the ECW Television Championship reign of Rob Van Dam in 99 to 2000. That's when he held it for over 700 days, something like that. And they've referenced that when it comes to the X Division Championship. Well, it hasn't been 700 days for Josh Alexander as X Division Champion just yet. So I think he retains here. I think these matches he's been involved in recently have all been to, again, overcome hurdles and prove what an incredible and persevering champion he is. Whether that's facing El Fantasmo, whether that's doing any of the matches he's been doing, the Iron Man match against TJP, they want the X Division Championship featured in these big matches, in these crazy matches, in these tough matches, because when we get towards the end of the X Division Championship reign, we can go, man, Josh Alexander was one of the best X Division champions of all time. That transitions him into the main event scene. That transitions him into possibly challenging, say, Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship and becoming the guy to defeat Kenny Omega. I think that might be the long-term plan when it comes to Josh Alexander and it comes to the X Division Championship. Option C is still a thing. So I don't think it's the right time for Josh Alexander to drop the championship here. I think, if anything, him retaining the championship in such a high-stakes, dangerous match with so many competitors in it, I mean, he would have defeated 5 other guys. How impressive is that as a champion, as a dominating champion? I think that's the avenue they're going to go down when it comes to Josh Alexander. So I say Josh Alexander retains. I think they've already teased possibly a post-Slammiversary feud with maybe Steve Macklin. I mentioned there W. Morrissey. I think that'd be fascinating to see that happen for the X Division Championship. So I'm going to say Josh Alexander leaves Slammiversary victorious. He leaves the Ultimate X match as the X Division Champion still. Next up, we have Moose and Chris Sabin. Now, I mentioned about matches of the night. I've been a little bit critical of the booking of this match. I'll be, it's there. I'm not going to pretend I haven't been. There's no doubt I think the match is going to be great. I mentioned the Ultimate X match being a contender for match of the night. This could be absolutely the same. Moose's improvement in the ring over the course of the last 12 months has been exponential. I mean, physically, obviously, he's in the best shape of his life, but he's never been doing better work in terms of inside the squared circle, on the microphone. He is, I don't know if he's at his peak yet, but he's certainly on the ascendancy. There's no doubt about that. And Impact Wrestling have just signed this guy to a multiple-year deal. He's with Impact Wrestling for the next 2 years. And my criticism of this one going in, because I'll address it, my criticism of this one going in was I felt there was a better use of Moose. And I felt that this was a guy, as I mentioned, he just re-signed with the company. For me, put it this way, there are 2 guys that I think could be the guys to defeat Kenny Omega for that Impact World Championship, because that's a massive spot. You're not just beating the Impact World Champion, you're beating the AEW World Champion, you're beating one of the best wrestlers in the world. So it's a huge spot, whoever gets it. And I think those 2 guys could be Moose or Josh Alexander. And I know, obviously, Moose had the match at Against All Odds. I still think that could have and maybe should have been the main event of Slammiversary, but that is what that is. I just thought that maybe that they had him not win that match against Kenny Omega because they had bigger plans. I was pitching before that they announced Moose versus Sabin, and then because, of course, the Young Bucks screwed Moose over at Against All Odds, and the Young Bucks have been open to wanting to do another match inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. Obviously, the match they wanted to do previously was the Bucks versus the Motor City Machine Guns. They can't at the moment. because of Alex Shelley's absence, because of his regular job as a frontline care worker. So because of that, I thought, well, maybe they could pivot. You could have these two opponents become tag team partners. Usually I'm against that storyline. Lord knows WWE does it enough. But I felt they could pivot to that and have Moose and Chris Sabin versus the Young Bucks. That's an interesting match, and that's a big-time match, and that's a good reason why Moose isn't challenging for the Impact World Championship. But this one, it just feels a little bit like a forced issue. I know it goes back to Under Siege, and I know they can say, well, Moose pinned Chris Sabin, and he injured Chris Sabin, went after his surgically repaired knee and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. They've put an issue in there, but I just don't know if I buy that being the best use of Moose on a big event like Slammiversary. I feel like they could do more with him. And maybe you could just argue, well, who on the roster does he face? And that's a difficult question to answer. So I think the positive coming out of this, I think Moose wins. I would be stunned if Chris Sabin won. I don't see a reason why Chris Sabin should win this match. I think Moose wins, and I think Moose is still in that conversation to become the Impact World Champion. I would be very surprised if we're in 2022 next year Moose hasn't been the World Champion. I think it's going to be a big second half of the year for Moose, especially now that they know where his future lies. And that future lies with Impact Wrestling. So I think Moose wins tomorrow night, but I think it'll be a good match. I think it'll be a very good match. We have the Knockouts Championship match. Arguably, this is one of the matches that people are talking about the most because I was going to say an open challenge. It's not. It's a mystery opponent. We've got a couple of mystery opponent matches. We've got the Impact Knockouts champion, Deonna Purrazzo, defending the Impact Knockouts Championship against a mystery opponent. Now, we did a video today on the Impact Wrestling News video talking about when Scott D'Amore teased the possible name she could be facing against. He referenced a hot mess, being Laurel Van Ness, who I don't, of course, think it will be because I think she'll be Matt Cardona's tag team partner. He referenced iconic, these being iconics, obviously referencing Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. I don't think it'll be them. I don't think it'll be them. I don't think it'll be either one of them, or I don't think it'll be a triple threat or anything like that. And he referenced Hardcore Country. Now, of course, it might not be any of them. They might all be red herrings. Impact Wrestling have done that in the past. They did it last year with Aces and Eights. That's worth pointing out. If they're all red herrings and it's not a former WWE name coming in, I think it'll be Su Yung. I think, obviously, the story there is that Susan and Kimberly were Deonna Purrazzo's backup for the best part of a year. Obviously, Deonna Purrazzo recently kicked him to the curb. Kimberly's been trying to get Su Yung to come back this past week on Impact Wrestling. I mean, they even brought in Father James Mitchell to bring Su Yung back this past week on Impact. Susan revealed to Kimberly, I knew about Su Yung all the time. And they might do a kind of a similar situation that they did at Bound for Glory last year, where it's a mystery opponent. Obviously, that was because Kylie Ray couldn't compete that night, and Su Yung came out and defeated Deonna Purrazzo. I could see them doing something like that if the outside WWE names are red herrings. So if it's an Impact name, you have to give me two. If it's an inside Impact Wrestling name, it's Su Yung. If it's an outside Impact Wrestling name, I think it's Mickie James. I think the Hardcore Country tease is legit. They've been teasing this quite a lot on social media. They've been teasing it on Impact quite a lot. They had the trash bag incident a couple of weeks ago with Fire and Flavor, where they picked up the trash bag. It said Mickie on there, of course, referring to Trash Bag Gate in WWE, where WWE sent Mickie James' belongings in a trash bag with her name on it. So they referenced that there. That was a nice little Easter egg. Social media, Deonna Purrazzo and Mickie James have been talking a lot about doing matches. Impact Wrestling in 60 have been doing programs about Mickie James matches as well. Mickie James, of course, is currently working with the NWA. She's the executive producer of the NWA Empower All-Women's Pay-Per-View. She's also wrestling the following night on the NWA 73rd Anniversary Pay-Per-View as well. Now, some people have looked at that and said, well, she's with the NWA, so she's not going to be working with Impact Wrestling. I disagree. And the reason I think it's Mickie James is because I think this plays into NWA Empower. Now, you could say, isn't there a bad relationship between Impact and the NWA? Yes and no. Previously, yes. I think now is no. We did the story yesterday talking that Impact Wrestling want to work with all of these other promotions. They mentioned discussions have been ongoing between the NWA and Impact Wrestling. That's how Kylie Ray got released from Impact and now is with the NWA. That dialogue has been open. Billy Corgan is certainly warming up to Impact. I think the majority of his heat was with Dixie Carter. Not so much of Impact. There was stuff there, but majority of it was with Dixie Carter. And business is business at the end of the day. Mickie James, of course, is the executive producer of that NWA Empower pay-per-view event. She said that she's not going to be wrestling that night because she's going to be an executive producer. I disagree. I think the main event of NWA Empower is going to be Mickie James versus Deonna Purrazzo for the Impact Knockouts Championship. or maybe one of the main events on that show, because maybe they might want to put the actual NWA Women's Championship in the main event of that show. But I think that'll be one of the main events, because I think Mickie James is going to be the mystery opponent tomorrow night. I think she's going to beat Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts Championship, and then I think Deonna Purrazzo is going to win that championship back at the NWA Empower pay-per-view event. And I also think there's going to be other knockouts appearing at that NWA Empower pay-per-view event as well, because I think this might be the beginning of a working relationship between Impact Wrestling and the NWA. Now, I could be massively wrong there. I can vividly see a situation where it is just Su Yung. I do think if it is Su Yung, people will be slightly upset, because we have seen it before. We saw it Bound for Glory. We saw it at Turning Point last year where Deonna Purrazzo won the title back. And I just think people have kind of been at this point conditioned to think we're going to see these former WWE names. And if we don't, people will complain. I mean, I know pro wrestling fans complain anyway, but certainly people will be complaining of, well, you kind of convinced me we were going to see some former WWE names. Where are they? You know, especially when you do these mystery opponent kind of scenarios. So I think it's going to be Mickie James. If not, it'll be Su Yung, I think. But I'm hoping it's Mickie James. I mean, I hope it will be Mickie James. I really do. Finally, we have the main event. It's for the Impact World Championship. It's a no disqualification match. It's the Impact World Champion Kenny Omega defending the Impact World Championship against Sami Callihan. Now, again, talking like I spoke about when it comes to the Moose and Chris Sabin match, I have been critical. I'll be open about it again. I have been critical of this because I don't know if I truly believe this as a Slammiversary main event. And all that comes down to is that I know that Kenny Omega's title reign is coming to an end soon. I don't think it's going to come to an end tomorrow night. My prediction since he won the thing, or even before so, was that he would drop it at Bound for Glory, because I think that lines up with All Out, because I think he's dropping the AEW World Championship at All Out to Hangman Page. I think he's going to drop the AAA Mega Championship at Triple Mania, and I think he's going to drop the Impact World Championship at Bound for Glory. To me, that makes the timeline adds up there. It does. And in addition to that, no disrespect to Sami Callihan whatsoever. I think he's very talented. I think he's an Impact loyalist, and I think that's a good thing. He's obviously a staunch Impact guy. He re-signed with Impact Wrestling in December last year. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, for me, whoever beats Kenny Omega for that Impact World Championship, that's a massive, massive spot. That is Impact Wrestling making a guy instantly. In a moment, they're saying, bang, you're the guy that we're building the company around. You can take Impact Wrestling back to the promised land. Not that it ever will be, but you can take Impact Wrestling back up the chain. You can get people interested. You are our guy. You're an Impact guy. You're our world champion. We're going to build the company around you for the next couple of years. No disrespect to Sami Callihan. I don't see him being that guy. I think Sami Callihan has a niche of his own. I think he does tremendous work in Impact Wrestling. I think he's capable of being a world champion. Of course, he's been one in Impact Wrestling before, but he's not the guy you build the company around. For me, there's two guys. I mentioned earlier on. It's Moose or it's Josh Alexander. They're the two guys for me that I would look at and say they should be beating Kenny Omega, because they can be the one that can really propel Impact Wrestling forward, especially in this post-pandemic era of the company going forward, because, of course, live fans return at Slammiversary and will be on Impact Wrestling television going forward. So I don't see Sami Callihan winning tomorrow, and I might be wrong, but I just don't see that happening. I think the no disqualification stipulation being added in, I know some people will say, well, that plays into Sami Callihan's hands. He's a hardcore wrestler. They can do lots of different stuff. There'll be weapons, and there'll be violence and all that kind of fun stuff. So it'll be a fun main event. I have no doubt about that. It'll be a great main event. But I think the moment that I saw the no disqualification stipulation on there, my mind immediately went, well, okay, we're getting a screwy finish. We're getting shenanigans. Whether that's Don Callis getting involved, whether that's Scott D'Amore getting involved, whether that's Tommy Dreamer getting involved, whether that's the Young Bucks coming out in the same vein that they did at Against All Odds. Someone's getting involved. We're getting a screwy finish somehow. I would like to see the Young Bucks come out. I thought it was really interesting to see them come out at Against All Odds, but it wasn't totally surprising because that was in Daly's place. That was in Jacksonville, Florida. That was on AEW territory. To have the Young Bucks come out and invade the Impact Zone. Of course, they were Generation Me in the past. Have the Young Bucks come out and truly be back in Impact Wrestling. That would be really exciting to me. Now, obviously, you could look at a situation where the closing picture of Slammiversary is Kenny Omega holding up the Impact World Championship and the AEW World Championship and the AAA Mega Championship, the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, holding up all of those bouts. By his side is the Young Bucks holding up the AEW World Tag Team Championships, and by their side, the Good Brothers holding up the Impact World Tag Team Championships. If you close your eyes, you can kind of see that picture. You can, and I think Impact Wrestling would go for that. Again, I'm not necessarily sure if I see the Good Brothers winning the Impact Tag titles because they've been so far from it. They've been so far from it in terms of their booking on Impact Wrestling television that to me that would be odd. But I see shenanigans, whether it's the Bucks, whether it's the Good Brothers, whether it's Don Callis, whether it's Scott D'Amore, whether it's Tommy Dreamer, whoever, someone's getting involved, and I don't see Sami Callihan leaving with that Impact World Championship because for me, Kenny Omega's going to drop the championship at Bound for Glory, and that's going to be against either Moose or Josh Alexander. I think that will be the right direction to go in. But I could be wrong. I have been before. So those are the predictions for tomorrow night. As I mentioned, we will be doing a live watch-along for the events, so I'll set that up tomorrow. We're going to be going live with a post-show reaction stream as well. So be sure to join us, subscribe bottom right hand corner, click the notification bell, you'll be notified when we go live. But as always, guys, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the Slammiversary predictions for tomorrow night? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, gut the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.